Hey everyone, and welcome to today's webcast. Invite your community to contribute digital materials to your archive, key considerations and new tools to simplify the process. Presented by Library Journal and sponsored by Preservica. My name is Joshua Bean, webcast manager for Library Journal, and we'll get started with today's presentation in just a moment. But first, let's go over a little bit of housekeeping. So your screen is completely customizable, and you can resize any of the windows and move them around, so feel free to adjust them as needed to get the most out of your desktop space. If you accidentally close any of the windows, you can bring them back up by clicking on the appropriate widget down at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions for our presenters during the webcast, you can submit those through the Q&A window at any time, and we'll address them at the end of the webcast. A copy of today's slide deck and some other resources are available in the resource list window, and you'll be able to download your continuing education certificate from the certification window once you've met the viewing requirements. You can tweet us about this event at Library Journal with the hashtag LJPreservica. And if you have any technical difficulties with the webinar platform, you can click on the help widget where you can find the system requirements and FAQs. And if that doesn't resolve your issue, you can send us a note through the Q&A window. Okay. All that out of the way, I'm going to hand things over to Katie Gambone with Preservica to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Joshua. Hello, and thank you to everyone joining us for today's webinar. Invite your community to contribute digital materials to your archive. We are so pleased to be working with the Library Journal again to bring you today's session, which we hope will be interactive, informative, and most importantly, useful. I'd also like to thank Amazon Web Services, a sponsor of today's webinar. As a partner of AWS, Preservica leverages the flexibility, agility, and security that AWS offers for our customers' digital preservation initiatives. Oops. Okay. So my name is Katie Gambone, and I'm moderating today's session. I am so pleased to be joined by my colleague, Aubrey Shanahan, who is Preservica's onboarding specialist. And Aubrey and I are both very excited to be joined by a guest speaker, Melissa Kemp. Melissa is a freelance writer and the archivist at KPW AMC Incorporated. Melissa works with a number of community organizations representing the BIPOC community to help collect and preserve important materials and artifacts to authentically represent their experience. All right, so for the agenda, today's session will last an hour. We'll begin by introducing you to a few resources that we've pulled together, which we hope provides helpful background on digital preservation and which will also allow you to practice digital preservation after the session. We'll then introduce you to our company, Preservica, and our passion, which is digital preservation, and we'll talk about why it's so important to us. We'll then jump into today's topic, how to make it easy for the community to contribute digital materials to your archive. We begin that section by collecting some feedback from you. So we have a few polls that we'll launch, so please be ready to submit your answers. We'll also cover a few use cases for community submissions. And most importantly, we'll hear from Melissa about community collecting and some key considerations when engaging in this type of work. And then we'll be sure to leave plenty of time at the end of the session for question and answer. Moving to the next slide. All right, so first up is a list of resources we'd like to point you to. So I believe I am highlighting that section of your screen right now. We've pulled together some great information here for you to explore, but most importantly, I'd encourage you to use the link to sign up for a free Preservica starter account. This will allow you to start building and preserving your own digital collection after today's session. And again, practice everything we're going to show you. You'll also get access to the Preservica Community Hub, which has a ton of resources to help get you going. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Aubrey. Aubrey?
Hi, thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name is Aubrey Shanahan, and I am the onboarding specialist here at Preservica. I've been here for just about 6 months, but my background is in libraries and archives. I received an MLIS from Simmons in 2018, which is actually where I learned about Preservica for the first time. And I've worked at several archives and public libraries since then. So I'm familiar with the industry, and I'm thrilled that you've all chosen to join us today. I am also excited to announce, as the slide is showing you, that we will be launching a new Starter Plus grant program. This will be coming early next year. We understand the budgetary challenges that are facing, especially smaller institutions, and we are happy to provide an opportunity to help kickstart your digital preservation journey. Winners of this grant will receive 2 years of Starter Plus fully funded, which includes 250 gigs of preservation storage and a public portal to share those assets with your community. So more information on that will be coming out again early next year. So keep an eye out on our socials for some updates about that soon. All right, I would like to briefly introduce some information about our company, Preservica. Our mission at Preservica is simple. It is to protect the world's cultural, economic, social, and political memory. More and more digital assets are created each day, and without intervention, they will be lost to time. They are just as, if not more, at risk than physical collections. I know that many of you are probably working at institutions with messy OneDrives, local drives, or SharePoints, sometimes all of the above. Legacy information is sometimes really difficult to find, and older files especially are prone to data degradation, which is over time the file can become unreadable. I remember having to reinvent the wheel myself at some of the libraries that I worked at. Things that had already been done, we had to kind of do over again because, oh, that document was somewhere on the S drive, but no one can find it now, or that document is unreadable now. It can be frustrating, and taking active steps to follow proper digital preservation practices is going to help you avoid those frustrating situations. You have important assets at libraries, strategic plans, meeting minutes for the board and committees, incident logs, programming materials, event photographs, all of these things that make up your library's records and history, and they need to be taken care of long term. Not to mention that many of you with us today are also tasked with, special collections and genealogy. It's a big task to do, and following those best practices are difficult to do on your own. So something that's important to this process is an OAIS, or Open Archival Information System. So this is kind of an example of a workflow of an OAIS. It has standards to ensure that digital materials are properly preserved and protected. Again, managing this kind of system on your own through open source solutions requires a lot of staff time and technical knowledge that can make it difficult or even impossible to implement. There's a lot that goes into it. So enter Preservica. We are an international standard for organization compliant OAIS dedicated to keeping your assets safe and readable, as well as helping you share them with your community. The thing that sets us apart from other data and collection management systems is that we are performing active digital preservation for your assets. Upon ingest, the system will verify data integrity, detect corruption, check for viruses, and most importantly, it will create copies of the file in current formats. For example, let's say you have a WordPerfect file. That's something that is not currently readable on systems. You can upload it to Preservica, where it will be re-rendered into PDF format, and that makes it usable once again. So some of those old documents that you might have that maybe just have seemed obsolete because you can't get to them, now you can, and you can gain back that institutional knowledge. So it's really valuable. And all of that is going to be happening for you seamlessly behind the scenes. And my colleague, Katie, who was just speaking, actually recently summed all this up in an article that she helped write for CIO. And the quote is, simply put, digital preservation is different from archival methods that just store the data safely. Active digital preservation brings information forward over time, moving files from old formats to current formats, ensuring that it remains readable. Digital preservation systems ensure nothing is lost during transitions through fidelity and fixity of data conversion, and keeps all the original files alongside a full audit trail of preservation actions. And with that, I would like to also share some information about our current community of archives. So this is our library community. We have a growing number of academic libraries and public libraries using Preservica, including the New York Public Library, Yale, Johns Hopkins, just to name a few. We will also work with over half of the state archives, as well as some city and county archives. So as part of our recently launched new generation of innovations in digital preservation, you can now invite community members to contribute directly to your Starter account. This feature is available for free in Starter and is what inspired the topic of this webinar. We're going to walk through this process in a demonstration, but we did also want to include your input here, include you as part of the conversation that we're having here. So we do have a couple of polls for you. So the first poll is going to be around the challenges that you face when you're acquiring archival content. So we'll get to the poll question in a moment, but just to go over a few important options that we've brought up in the poll. So some of the issues are inconsistent ways of receiving content and formats, rights administration is difficult and transfer of rights, the requirement to handle a vast array of different file formats, the inability to easily add metadata to submitted content, and working across multiple systems to capture, administer, and share online. Content submitters have limited or no archival experience. You're working a lot of times with community members that don't have best practices in mind. And demographic challenges. So content submitters are not technical or have no online access. And we are going to go in depth on some of these things later with Melissa as well. But we wanted to hear from you first to see what kind of challenges you face. And feel free, if you have one that's not on here, you can send it over to us too. So again, feel free to submit the answer here. That if you don't have one on here that's working for you, you can add one into the Q&A. I see people are all too busy. That's definitely true, Sarah.
Okay, that's been about 30 or so seconds there. Aubrey, if we want to share the results.
Sure thing. All right, so it looks like our leaders are inconsistent ways of retrieving content and formats, and limited archival knowledge and experience of submitters. Those are the two big ones, as well as submitters having limited technical experience and or no online access. I'm also seeing some other answers in the chat too. Untrained archivists and trying to learn and do at the same time. That's definitely a concern that I have seen working with folks. And also, I am the only employee right now. It is difficult to take on more work. That's definitely an issue as well, Carmen. Thanks for submitting those answers along with these. All right, so our second poll here is going to be about the types of materials that you would like to collect from your community. So we've got some examples here from our What Do You Preserve campaign that we ran for American Archives Month. We'd like to know some more from you about what kinds of things you would like to consider when it comes to community archiving. What are you looking for? What are you most excited about collecting? So we'll put that poll up for you too. And again, feel free to input other answers into the Q&A.
All right, maybe just give that maybe a few more seconds. You want to submit your answer? All right, Aubrey. Yeah, I think we should be good.
Great. Okay, oral histories out in front. That is great to see because that is part of our demo. I'm actually going to be demoing an oral history ingest through external submissions, so that's awesome. Commemorative events, that's a big one for sure. And institutional records, yep, especially for those that are working closely with their city or government or are part of the city or government. That's great, great information. Thank you all for taking the time for answering those questions. And I'm definitely going to keep these in mind as we get going with our demonstration. All right, so the use case for this demonstration, the scenario that we have here for you is Roberta, who is a library archivist, and she is working on an oral history project and is relying on some local volunteers to assist in that effort. She needs a way for those assets to get into the digital archives so that they can be shared with the public. Melanie is a community historian volunteering for the project. She's compiled several interviews for the project and is excited to share them with the library, but she's unable to send them over email as the combined file sizes are too large to be sent that way. Rather than trying to put them on a USB and going to the library in person, as I said, we're all busy, there's now an easy way to get those files directly into the library's archive. We'll go ahead and give you an overview here of the submission process. So you can plan your invite to receive content submissions, which is you're going to be able to actually go in and edit and change how that looks. Then you can go ahead and send the invite to recipients. And then there is an easy process for the submitter to get the email, get the link, and submit their content. And you can then manage and review all your submissions in one place. You can decide which files you keep or get rid of. And then you can move that content over to the public side to share your content with your communities. All right, so with that, I am going to move us over to the demo. So I'm just going to get my screen share set up real quick. Okay, hopefully you can all see that now. So we're going to walk through the process. This is Preservica's website. We'll go ahead and log into Starter. All right, so this is Starter. This is what the interface looks like. If some of you haven't been to our other webinars or aren't familiar with the product, I'll just go through really quick with a basic overview of information. We've got your toolbar up here. You can reach our community hub, which Katie mentioned earlier. You have your window for upload and preserve process, so that will pop up automatically if you're doing ingests. Your user settings are here. You can sort your assets, you can change how they look, and this is the main way for you to add content. You can upload a single file, you can upload a folder, you can do bulk metadata uploads, which we went over in the last webinar if you'd like to check that out, and we also have trainings available on that in the Community Hub. And you can create folders as well. So this is where your main collections will be. You can kind of see a breakdown of the folders within those collections over to the side here. We have a few different use case folders set up here. And then you can check on your dashboard, which is going to have all the information about your collection, what kind of metadata work you've been doing, file formats, all that good stuff. And then there is a button to go view your portal. So for our purposes today, we're going to be focusing on the external submissions. And I do want to reiterate too, the nice thing about all of this is that it is in your browser. You don't have to download anything for this. I just went to that website, logged in, and I can ingest however I want. So it's really nice and easy and simple. All right, so this is the external submission area here. You can go ahead, this is where the review submissions would be. So if I had submissions, they would show up here, but you can check the settings over here. And I have gone ahead and pre-filled out all this information for us. But this is where you'd put your repository name, your name, the heading for your submission areas down here, and the intro for your submission area. And you can add terms and conditions and privacy policy down here. This kind of information can definitely help if you have rights concerns, or if your library does that kind of thing. You can put all that information here in these links. And you can also preview here to see what the email is going to look like. Currently, at this time, we don't have a way to customize it, but it's still really nice, professional, and clean. And you can check the submission area here as well. Make sure this looks good to you and that it is ready to go. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do an invitation. So you can include a group of emails or a single person here. I'm just going to do myself for simplicity's sake. So again, we're doing this for an oral history project, so I'll go ahead and send that invitation. And it'll take just a moment. It's going to pop up and let you know that the invitation is on its way. And I just received the email. So this is what the email looks like. It's nice and simple, easy. Go ahead and click on submit, and that will take you to the submission page. Here, I'll go ahead and enter my name, agree to the terms and conditions and privacy policy, and here's where we can add that submission. So the nice thing is it's the same thing as Starter. You can drag and drop content. So what I can do is I can drag and drop this entire folder and pop it in here. And it's going to go through all of those preservation actions that we talked about before. So this is where those fixity checks are going to happen, the verifying of integrity, all that good stuff. It's happening right here behind the scenes, and performing the ingest on top of it. So this will just take a little bit because it does include a video file. We wanted to give you an idea of the different kind of files that you can upload. All right, so it's all done, and then you can go ahead and click submit down here. You get a thank you, which means that the submission is complete. And I will be getting another email here. So as the archivist, you would then receive the submission via email, and then you can review it. It will also pop up in your starter. going to have me log in again for security. But it will pop up eventually up here in the corner. If you haven't looked at it and if you forgot about it, there will be a little pop-up up here that says you have a submission ready to view. But since it's brand new, it's right here. You can see the submission, you can see the date, the submitter, the submission name, and view the details on this. So the nice thing here too is you can, like I said, you can kind of expand. You can see what files are in here. Maybe you didn't want all of this information. You know, maybe you want everything but this metadata file. You'd probably want the metadata file, but let's say for these purposes that you don't want that and you didn't want this image. You could take those off and save it, and it would only keep those things and move them into the folder. It would still keep these in here until you actively delete them. But it's nice because you can have some flexibility there in terms of what you're saving or not saving. We'll go ahead and save the whole thing. And I'm going to move this into library collections. It's just asking if I'm sure. And it lets us know that the submission is on its way to the chosen folder. So we can go back to the Explorer. Again, this is where your overview of collections is going to be. Go to library collections. Sure why it's being difficult with me right now. All right, there we go. And here's the oral history project. So it's all uploaded, it's all in here. And if you did have this metadata information, it's easy now to go ahead and input that. You can click on the individual assets and you can add metadata here as well. So let's say you wanted to do Dublin Core. You could add that information here and then add the creator, all that good stuff, save it, and that metadata is going to be there now as well. So you can also go back here and you can choose to make this public, which we'll go ahead and do. And we'll do it on a collections level because having the parent folder be public is going to make it easier. You can then go in and decide which stuff within that folder you don't want to be public, but that way the parent folder is there too. You don't have to go digging for that subfolder. You don't have to search for it in your portal. So that'll just take a moment. And it's all done, and we'll go ahead and view the portal. And this is our brand new updated portal. It includes advanced search. You can search with metadata fields. So it's just a little bit more in-depth as far as searching capability as our previous portal was, which is really great. And you can see now that folder's here, and we can go ahead and look at the oral history project. And you can view the assets on here. So it's a nice, easy way to get that information out there to your community, to your stakeholders. It just makes it a streamlined process so you're not having to go back and forth with people over email. This allows you to kind of have more control over the process as well and makes it a little bit easier to track provenance, rights, all that good stuff. So there are lots of reasons. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, go back to the slides. There are lots of reasons that you might want to utilize this feature. If you work at an academic institution, you're going to have theses, school memorabilia, school clubs, events. Even if you work at a public library, you might have those things. I know that the public library that I worked at, we had a high school closed down, and we wanted, submissions from the public to kind of memorialize this old school shutting down. And I know there was a lot of difficulty there in terms of getting those images and files over to our librarian. And something like this would have made it a lot easier to do so. If you work, again, in public libraries, you're going to have genealogy requests most likely. personal family history, family trees, cemetery information. And if you work more towards the city side, you're going to have estate requests, photographs, correspondence, financial records, maybe even the different departments within your city are going to be housed in your archives. So this is a way to get that information from those departments. There's also community organizations, so city garden clubs, Rotary International, DAR. There's lots and lots and lots of use cases for this. So this was us just showing you one possible use case. So with that, I do want to move on to talk to Melissa. I'm so happy that she's joining us here today. We've kind of touched on the side of archiving through community, and there is also community archiving, which is a separate concept, which involves, that community focus, that going actually into a community like a BIPOC community or an LGBTQ community and helping them archive their assets. So Melissa's going to talk a little bit about both of those things. Thank you again so much, Melissa, for joining us today. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. And some of the things I plan to say you have already mentioned, so I may emphasize a few, but I would like to talk about some of the key points of community archiving, and let us start with finding out who those key members and spokespersons are. Any successful archives project begins with a core group of stakeholders, those who have a love of the archival content and recognize the benefits of preserving it. One example I've lived with is capturing the history of my mountain hometown of Roanoke, Virginia, which turns out to have many rich geological, and historical points of interest. A core stakeholder group has continued over the course of my lifetime, which is about 60 years, to keep the history very vibrant, alive, and keep tourists coming to our city that is known as the Star City of the South. So it's important to find and introduce yourselves to those core stakeholder groups, that community group. And by community and stakeholders, I'm using the terms to define any group of people who agree upon the parameters, the customs, language, activities, traditions, rituals, artifacts, and historical documents that tell the story of the community's existence and importance. So this definition is open for any group of people who fit within it, and it centers that group's understanding of their experiences and why those experiences are important. Therefore, they should be preserved. So to create an effective community archives, stakeholders have to actively plan pathways of collaboration, the key to almost every successful archives, so that key community members are those most important stakeholders whose voices are centered first, whose needs and opinions, whose families, companies, or anyone who will be the subject of the archives are first and foremost, and are consulted first and foremost in preparing the archives, as we hope it will become. So next, let's cover the deed of gifts. Once we have established a relationship that will allow us to create a trusted repository, donors will now want to contribute content. The deed of gift, a very important document that is going to capture the demographic information, the descriptions of the content, but also provenance or the order of ownership and stipulations for use, are very critical documents to cover at the beginning of the archive's creation. It's important to keep in mind for a community archive that not all donations made by all donors are invited for public display. Preserving in archives does not immediately mean that those archives need to be public. They may or may not be. So some examples in communities. Some BIPOC community groups may have particular activities or rituals. They may sing, they may study, they may act, and they may not necessarily want to have some of their content shared with other groups. Another example, the Divine Nine, the designation for the name of the African American Greek affiliated fraternities and sororities, are groups that have extremely rich and detailed secret rituals, initiations for their members, serenades for those who may marry, or rituals that signify particular anniversaries or when a member passes. None of these rituals or content is available for public viewing, but much of it is widely preserved. So don't let the need for privacy keep you from preserving your community or your cultural archives. Privacy is something that the software and the preservation abilities we are discussing today will allow you to maintain. So another point that we need to follow is we need to follow the outreach using tools that the community is familiar with. Around us every day are multiple groups of people who have fantastic stories to tell and preserve. How do we get to those people? How do we know they have that content? The most important way, a very powerful way to build trust and to gain their interest in your abilities to assist them is to communicate with them where they live, how they function, and using the communication methods most important to them. One of my favorite examples of this in many communities is radio. And those of us who live online, as I do, have forgotten the importance of the radio as a medium of communication, advertisement, garnering interest, letting folks know what's going on in their local areas. So it's very important as you are working with community groups to create community archives and to begin to publicize your work and draw in content that you talk to the groups you're trying to reach using the methods they use to speak to you, whether it's writing, whether it's radio, whether it's video, whether it's pictures, however it happens, whether it's community meetings in particular locations. Please know these and utilize them as you begin to continue or to draw your content together. I was very thrilled to hear Aubrey talk about oral history, and it was a point that I wish to make. For many communities, oral history is absolutely critical in the capture and preservation. For some, written history is simply not as useful or as respected. Therefore, as someone assisting communities in archiving their content, be ready to help them collect oral histories, collect all kinds of media that isn't writing, and to center that media thinking about ways that you are going to make that accessible to those who wish to view the archives. Consider that unfortunately in today's world where many sorts of disasters are falling upon many different areas, we may be forced to view and access our artifacts, things that are physical, through 2D or 3D images, or even in the future, perhaps holographic reconstruction of artifacts that have been destroyed. So I say these things so that as you begin to work with community archives, you talk very quickly with the community about what kinds of formats are they comfortable with as representations of their artifacts and their archives. Because we have a wide variety of technical ability and are extremely excited about our technical ability, does not mean that the communities we work with are going to share that excitement or have trust in it. So it's very important to take time to find out how is the community going to be satisfied with the creation of their archives. And after you've decided that, it's going to be very, very important to think about partnering and to think about longevity. Partnering, in my opinion, is one of the most important ways a community archive can build itself into a long-standing repository to encourage generations to continue contributing to it and collecting the history. So we can access all sorts of technical archival knowledge in our local libraries, colleges, universities, and our local archives. Most states have a state archive, an archivist. There are state colleges and universities and libraries all over the place that collect area history and content, and who have personnel with the expertise that many community archivists who are beginning do not have and are afraid about because they don't have this. But a nice collaboration, an introduction, a series of conversations, even focus groups among the community members, stakeholders, and those expertise and experts, in the local area can go so far in helping a community succeed in their archival process. Not only that, these repositories often have volunteers or even students who will widely benefit from assisting a community in working through the various projects of their archive. And so, last but not least, is how will we preserve our archive over the course of years? After we've taken all this time to bring it to life, to make it successful, we've gotten wonderful, relevant donations to collect and display. What do we do to make this thing alive and well 10, 20 years from now? Immediately, the stakeholder group needs to begin its formulation and its implementation of a tactical plan that is going to guarantee the life of the archives. In such a plan must appear directions for archives management, preservation, maintenance to ensure long-term viability, acquisitions, marketing, advertising, infonomics, activities that are going to monetize the archives in ways that are going to help it increase funding and to keep up its maintenance. And then, in all honesty and truthfulness, there need to be either plans for grants, fundraising, endowments, and major gifts, or plans for continued private funding of the archives to keep it alive. And those plans also need to include technical plans so that the content of the archive continues to be viable, as is made possible with the wonderful software of Preservica. So to conclude, the most important thing for me with any community archive is for the community members and the local resources to join themselves together to express what it is their needs may be, to understand that a community archive is a long-term plan and it requires long-term work, long-term commitment, and actual funding to keep it alive. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Aubrey.
All right, Melissa, thank you so much for that insightful information. I think that's going to be really useful for a lot of the folks here. We really do appreciate you taking your time with us today. I do want to just mention again, we have these new features in Preservica. We've got the new portal. We've got the external submissions. So we really want to make this process for you for collecting with your community as easy and seamless as possible. One of the things that I really like the most about Preservica is they really do listen to the feedback of their users. So we always welcome, if you're trying it out and you have suggestions, you can always bring those to the community hub. We do have a product ideas section that you're welcome to add to as well. But this is an exciting new generation of digital preservation for us, and we are thrilled to have you all here and to be a part of it and to learn about it. So with that, I think we are going to move to questions.
Yes. So this is Katie. Just want to say, Aubrey and Melissa, that was really fantastic. Thank you both so much. And again, a huge thank you to Library Journal for allowing Preservica to offer today's session. Also, a thank you again to AWS, our partner, for hosting Preservica customer content and for helping to sponsor today's webinar. We're going to open it up for question and answer. As a reminder to all attendees, if you have a question, please enter it into the chat feature. We are going to try to get through as many of these as we can before it turns 2 o'clock, which is coming up in a little less than 15 minutes. We also wanted to offer that we will be happy to stay on after 2 o'clock, so we're able to stay on with you until 2:30. So if you have specific questions you'd like to ask us and we're not able to answer them before 2 o'clock, please stay on. We'll be here to answer those questions with you. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Just 1 second as I scroll down to the list of questions. Okay, here's a good one. Does the invite have the ability to link a deed of gift for the patron to sign?
So as of right now, we don't have a way to link that kind of thing. You would want to email that separately ahead of time, email them a copy of your deed of gift ahead of time so that they could fill it out and then attach it as part of their submission would probably be the best way to do that. But it is something, it would be nice if it was integrated, and it is something that we'd like to consider for sure.
Great. Is there a size limit for submitted items, especially via email?
As of right now, there's not, I don't think there's a specific limit. I know that the ingest limit on the browser can be difficult if you go too far over like 4 or 5 gigs. I think it does slow down significantly. So if they want to do multiple submissions with that link, they can do that too, and that'll probably speed up the process too.
Okay, great. Here's another good one. How long does the invitation stay valid? For example, if you have someone who has regular submissions, would one invite work, or do they need a new one for each submission?
Currently, the links are good for 7 days, and that is something I have raised, and I know that others are aware of too, is that it would be nice if there was an option for a reoccurring link for submitters who are giving you regular submissions. But at the time of this recording, it is just the 7-day limit for now.
Great, thank you. How is the best way to upload the metadata from external contributors?
So it kind of depends on the project that you're doing. We don't have a way right now to have the metadata from the submission automatically attached to the submission itself. So that requires you to go in and add that metadata manually currently. But that is another thing that we have been taking a look at. We have received some feedback on that it would be nice to have a more automatic metadata process. But you can, as I showed in the demonstration, you could have somebody send you a metadata file with the submission, so that would make it a little easier for you to copy and paste that information as you're going through.
Okay. One of our attendees mentioned a webinar I attended recently suggested that updating formats was only available one step up from Starter Plus. Is that true? This isn't about submission, it's more about updating assets to make them usable as time goes on.
Yeah, the preservation actions. So upon ingest, like I mentioned with the WordPerfect example, it will transform it into something that is readable. This isn't necessarily true for every single file format, but we can ingest over 2,000 types of file formats, and I think our user base has only submitted 1,400. So we can take any file format in terms of taking it and making it readable. That depends on the file format, but again, like the WordPerfect example, it will transfer it into a PDF so that it's readable. I think what this might be referencing is automatic preservation, so auto preservation, and that is something that is happening over time. It is constantly rechecking the file and ensuring that it is readable and in a current format. That does come with a step up that comes with our professional edition, but you do have the benefit of anything that you put in the current file formats, it can transfer and make it readable for you. So
great. We have a few questions about deeds of gift. So one attendee asks, do you have an example of a deed of gift that Preservica uses? And another similar question, where is a deed of gift or equivalent in the Preservica system?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, we don't have one that's actually built into the system. There are a lot of, if your organization doesn't already have a deed of gift form, there are lots of resources out there that can show you an example deed of gift that you can put together really easily. There's templates. I believe there are templates on SAA's website. So there are definitely resources for that. And if you want to contact me, we can have a conversation about that too. I'm happy to help with that kind of thing. But yeah, we don't have one that's built into the system. It would be your institution's deed of gift that you could send over, have them fill out, and then include as part of the submission.
Okay, great. Can genealogical material be included in the process?
It certainly can be. We don't have a way to, I think if you're referencing like family trees, those aren't renderable right now, but you certainly can send them over and we can ingest them and save them. There's just not a way to actually like render out the tree in the software. But yeah, you can absolutely, as I said, there's, over 2,000 file formats accepted into Preservica. So if you find one that you can't submit, let us know because we'd love to include it. So
great. Is there a way for the public to help with transcription of materials?
Yeah, as of right now, I think the easiest way to do that would be to have somebody, if you had files submitted and you needed transcripts of videos, you could put them onto your Preservica public portal and you could share them that way with folks. You could send them links to that, or they could just visit and write up their transcription that way. We don't have anything built into the software though.
Great. How easy is it to transfer current digital data from a service over to your service?
So if you're using a different software, usually it's pretty simple because it just requires, I say simple, it's going to take time and effort because you're going to likely have to download it from that system and then re-ingest it into our system. So it will take a little time, but usually most systems, I think it's pretty simple to do that. It just, again, is going to take the time and effort.
Great. Another question related to migrating to Preservica, it sounds like, that relates to cost. So how much does basic Preservica software cost, not hosting or other parts? What is the pricing structure?
Sure. So we have available our pricing page. I can actually just briefly share my screen and show you what that looks like. And we can provide the link to this as well. But we do have this resource. So you can look at the pricing page here. We do bill it annually, but 250 gigs of storage starts off at $2,580 per year. And this is for this is for Starter Plus. So this is if you're looking for those upgraded features. Excuse me. If you want the upgraded features, if you're okay, if you're working on a small project and you can start off with Starter 2, I think that's a great way to do it. We do also have capacity upgrades available as well that are a little bit lower cost. So
great.
And we can share that link with you all as well.
Yeah, we'll be sure to send that in the follow-up for those who are interested. Though you have quite a bit of space and functionality available to you on Preservica Starter, and we would absolutely encourage you to start there. Does Preservica convert submitted audio or video files to archive preferred formats?
Not currently. That's not an option that we have. So it's kind of up to our users, because some people, even though it's the archival standard, may not want that conversion to happen. So that would be something that you would have to do on your end, is make a conversion to whichever file format your institution prefers. We don't do that automatically. We only do that transfer if it's something that's unreadable, like the WordPerfect file. That will transfer to a PDF so you can actually access it.
Okay. I know we're getting close to 2 o'clock, so maybe one more question before we sign off for those who need to hop off at 2. Again, we will be live, and you'll be able to stay and ask additional questions after 2 o'clock. But just for those who are still with us, how long has Preservica been around?
So Preservica has been around for about 20 years now. It actually started off as a project with the National Archives in the UK. And it was a commissioned project through a company called Tesella. And that's kind of how we got our start, was we did that project for them, built their archive, and from there moved on to share that technology with others. And it's grown into what it is today, and we have over 3,000 users.
Great. So for those of you who do have to hop at 2, I'll just quickly, again, thank you for joining us. You can practice everything you saw here today on your own for free. So again, in your resources list, there's a lot of resources there for you to read and learn more about digital preservation, as well as the link for a free Preservica Starter account. You'll also get access to the Preservica Community Hub, where you'll have a lot of resources and additional training. If you're not able to stay on with us after 2 o'clock, then I would invite you to reach out to Aubrey or myself. Our email addresses are listed here, and we'd be happy to answer your questions over email or set up a one-on-one session with you as well. So I will also just add, you can follow Preservica at our website, which we've listed here, and on social media at the URLs here. So thanks again. And again, we'll be on for the next half hour. If you'd like to stay, we'll just go back into some of the questions we haven't answered yet. But thank you again for those who have to sign off. We really appreciate you sticking with us. Okay, so with that, we can continue. There have been a lot of great questions, and there's really just a few more that I see listed here. So can Preservica send the ingest to us to store our own files and make them available ourselves? We just use the ingest and fixity, etc. parts.
Okay, that's a question I am not 100% sure on, to be honest with you. That goes into, so if you're like an existing Cloud Editions customer, That's going to be more on the technical side of things, and I don't have a great answer available for you now, but that's certainly something we could work with the team on and come up with an answer for you.
Great. Do you have available a presentation for conducting oral history interviews? And that might be a good question for Melissa as well, if you're on.
Yeah, currently we don't have one through Preservica officially, but it is something I'm very passionate about oral history. I focused a lot of my time in my master's degree on oral histories. So I do love the subject and I love working with people on that. So it's something I would definitely be willing to do in the future. And if you had wanted to have a one-on-one conversation about that, I'd be more than happy to do so. And yeah, Melissa, I don't know if you're still with us, but if you had any input on that, any resources.
All right.
Okay.
Does the software enable automated temporary embargoes of submissions? For example, keeping files private for a certain number of years?
So it doesn't do that automatically. That would be something you'd have to kind of watch on your end. And again, that would be totally up to your implementation procedures, at least at the starter and starter plus level. Again, I don't want to speak too much to professional and above. There may be more capabilities around that I am not aware of, but focusing on starter and starter plus, that's not a capability we have currently.
Okay, great. Do you have available a that we've already covered that one. We'll go to the next one. I am the lone archivist and not sure where to start when creating the terms and conditions and privacy policy. Are there resources to help me draft these documents?
There certainly are resources. They're not Preservica specific, but there are definitely resources out there to help you draft those kinds of things. I am actually still working on a training for this kind of thing for people who are lone archivists or who are very new to the profession and maybe need some help finding those resources. I am working to compile that kind of thing into an e-learning training. Hopefully that will be available sometime in the new year.
Great. Can you?
And again, you can always reach out to me too, personally, if you want to have a chat about it. I can share with you what I know. So.
Fantastic. Can you transfer digital assets from an existing AWS bucket directly to new Preservica AWS instance? We're implementing Cloud Professional at present.
Okay, that is going to be another question probably for our team that works with Professional and up Cloud Professional. I am not 100% sure on that one, so that would be one that we can definitely check with the team. And you can send me an email directly if you'd like to with more information, and I can get it to the right person. Or you're welcome to email anyone else on the team as well.
Great. We will have a copy of all of the questions from today's session. So as Aubrey shared, we'll document everything Aubrey's already responded to, as well as some of the questions we might have to go back to our technical team to get the best possible answers for you. And we will be sending that out to all of the registrants as a follow-up communication. So stay tuned for that. If you don't have your question answered today, again, we will be sure to respond to you with the full list of Q&A from today's session. So do we need to convert formats for the public use before ingesting? For example, if we upload TIFF images, would the end user view images in TIFF, or could the files be converted to JPEG or JPEG 2000s?
I believe this does happen for you on certain things. Again, I'm not 100% sure on this. I don't want to answer with full concreteness here, but I will say that I know that there are certain assets that when you ingest them, say like the WordPerfect file, we may have them as like a different type of file format that you view in the back end. And then for the public, it would be that PDF that they're actually looking at. So that kind of conversion does take place. I don't know how it works for images exactly, but I do believe there is some kind of mitigation there for easier public viewing.
Okay. One more sort of technical question. I think you mentioned tracking provenance automatically. How is that information made accessible to users seeking to understand authenticity and reliability?
So it doesn't actually track it automatically. And I apologize if there was miscommunication there, but it is something that the email trail and the submission trail helps you keep track of that kind of information. And then what I would suggest is inputting that then into the metadata. You could put that in the notes and say, you know, this was a submission from so-and-so. That way it's attached to the file, but it's not done automatically at all. It would be a process of putting it in through the metadata.
Fantastic. So a couple of the remaining questions I'm able to see are more personal to institutions. I think one that might benefit the entire audience, though, and just thinking creatively about maybe how to get a program started or you know, how to use the community submissions feature. This person asks, how would you see this working in a middle school library? I have some interesting ideas about that, but I'd love to hear yours, Aubrey.
Yeah, I love that too. I worked as a teen librarian with middle schoolers for a long time. I think there could be a lot of really interesting projects that you could do with this kind of thing, especially, you know, with everything that happened with COVID. It's nice to have options to do things virtually. So you could potentially have fun little programs that you do through submission, art contests, you know, their English papers. There's like kind of all kinds of things you could do with external submissions to connect with them and then to help them share their work to a wider audience if that's something they're interested in. So there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think even reaching out to former alumni, thinking about, you know, can you start collecting, you know, the administrative records of the organization by getting, you know, administrative staff involved and or faculty, just to have that kind of background and history on your school. If that's something you're interested in, this is a great tool for starting to collect that type of information. And again, you can keep it private or also make it publicly accessible if your middle school is open to having that information shared, particularly around anniversaries and such. So that's great.
Definitely.
We have a couple other questions. One person is asking to set up a one-on-one to discuss an oral history project. I'm actually just going to go back here to our slide, which lists Aubrey's email address directly. So the person who asked that question, we do have your email address and we'll reach out to you individually to schedule. But again, if there's others who are still on and who would like to set up a one-on-one session, here's our contact information. And really, please feel free to reach out to us. We love talking to the community about your projects and thinking about how we can be helpful to you. So I think that brings us to, unless Josh or Sean, if you see additional questions that I'm not seeing, I think we've gone through the list that's been submitted already. For those of us who are still live, and it looks like there are quite a few of you, if you have other questions, please, again, feel free to continue submitting those questions through the chat feature and we'll answer them as they come in. And I guess, Josh, if there's any sort of closing out that you'd like to do as well.
Sure. Yeah, it looks like we got to everyone's questions. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it looks like Yoko just submitted a question.
let's make sure we answer that one then. Let me see if I can.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I see it there. Yeah.
Any metadata editing tools available? For example, find and replace, spell check, etc. That's a great question.
Yeah, so that kind of functionality comes more down the line. Our metadata tools that we have for Starter and Starter Plus are a little bit more basic. So that's going to be just the ability to kind of enter into those fields. It should tell you if there's spelling errors. You should get the little squiggly red line. But for the most part, they're pretty simple in terms of what you can do. You can do the bulk metadata upload, which is really great. You can try that in Starter for free, and that's going to allow you to attach a full sheet of metadata that you know is going to have gone through a CSV's spell check, all that stuff. So that's a really nice option. That is a great tool that we have available. We do, again, have training on that on the Community Hub as well.
Great. Thank you, Aubrey, for staying on longer and to answer all these questions, and Joshua for allowing us to do that. I think it's been really helpful, and we're always so excited to see so many questions and so much engagement from the audience. So thank you, everybody who's been attending. And
yeah, thank you all so much. I hope to hear from some of you soon. I'm excited.
Oh, we actually have one more question that just came in, so let's keep going. Does Preservica support linked data and semantic web implementations?
So again, that's going to come past the Starter Plus level. So that would be a technical question we could definitely discuss further down the line. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll flag that one for follow-up.
Thanks, Josh.
And yeah, I guess we will close things out. Yeah, thanks again, everybody, for attending today, and especially for everyone that stuck around for these extra few minutes. Just a reminder that we do record all of our webcasts, so you can watch the on-demand versions usually the day after. So tomorrow we'll send you a thank you email, and it'll have a link to watch the on-demand recording. So if you missed any part of today's webcast, or if you want to share this with a colleague that wasn't able to watch it today, that you think might find it valuable, you can share that with them when you get the link tomorrow. And you can also find a full list of all of our archived and upcoming webcasts on the events and professional development section at libraryjournal.com. And with that, I guess we will wrap things up, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.